So let's go on the projector.
Put that out. It's creepy.
I love it.
It's finally working, so don't think so.
All right.
Well, you know what happened the other day with it? I didn't realize like the little cord that plugs in here in the bottom had come loose.
You know, we got this right when they came out, and we're doing a training for PIT,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't really practice it. So when it was showtime, they turned it on, and that's when it radically spun around. And it totally knocked me off my game. It freaked me out. It would spin around like Chucky. Hi, Barbara. Oh, I can't hear Barbara for you.
Oh,
She's muted. That's fine.
Yeah, Barbara, you're muted.
I keep forgetting you're muted when you come into these meetings.
Hi there.
Hi.
Oh, there's your little thumb up. Okay. Whenever everybody's settled, we'll get going.
Good.
Yeah, I'm pretty much
We
good.
good? Okay, can we get a motion to approve minutes from July?
So moved.
Barbara?
Yeah.
Approved. Second approved. Good. Okey doke. Let's move to point 2, the borough manager report. Samantha, do you want to take some time to just call anything out, or?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. So I believe our council president will talk about this during the council meeting, but I did want to point out from the report, the borough was awarded the grant for 3 Elmwood, which we'll talk a little more about during the grants update. But I thought it was worthwhile to mention now as well, because it's, you know, it's a really good thing for the borough, and I'm really glad that we got it.
I wish I took my mask off because the ear to ear. I know we're going to talk about this in the meeting, but you were confident that you would get it. When we hired you, you had a record of grant. This was one where I thought a $500,000 grant for this little slice of property in the borough. I was so nervous about, but
I'll admit that was my main fear as well about it, because the one I did before was half as much money for like twice as much land. And I was paranoid that, you know, the state would be like, well, all these other properties we could help buy, you know, get more bang for your buck, and parts of the state with a lower cost of living. But thankfully, I think we had a really compelling case for why the property, you know, needed to be preserved, and thankfully the state agreed with us.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
I thought it was really interesting to see that ours was the highest award in Montgomery County of the municipalities. So that really says to me how much they value open space, and especially open space with a creek running through it. I was really pleased to see that. And Samantha, thank you for all your hard work. It's just to help us get to
No, and I have to give a lot of credit, actually. I mean, honestly, the bulk of the work was done by the Lower Merion Conservancy.
True.
And they have some really, you know, great people on their team, and they were certainly a huge part of this.
Well, that's really amazing. And I'm just glad it's public now,
Yeah.
so that folks can celebrate that. Anything else, or any other questions for the manager report? Ira?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Can we move down then? Samantha, if you don't have anything else to add, any questions about the treasurer report? Thank you. And this is I didn't think I'd be here, so I didn't think we'd have a quorum. So we don't have anything to make decisions about. And so, okay.
Actually, I apologize, Cindy. Can I just point out one thing on the treasurer's report? I do just want to share, you know, we're at the point of year now where I shouldn't jinx this too much by saying this. I do want to say that overall revenues are thankfully very strong this year. And, you know, we've, despite having some new things added to expenses, we've cut expenses. Some things have come in under budget. And, you know, overall we're on track, you know, to be about where we want to get budget. I will note that we did budget $124,000 surplus for this year, and right now we're projecting a $60,000 surplus. However, the employee retirement agreement that we thought we were going to pay out in 2021 ended up getting paid out in 2022, and that's really the biggest reason for that discrepancy.
We also, I mean, presumably have some staff vacancies that
Yeah.
contributed to that. So,
Yeah, and that all is factored into that 60. Yeah.
Barbara, any comments from Zoom?
No, thanks.
I don't think we have anyone in the public. Okay, I had under grants updates for you to tell us about 3 Elmwood. Anything else to update on?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get that file open. All right, so we actually, council will talk about this later tonight. Myself and the volunteers team actually decided not to submit a grant application for Safe Streets for All. The items we were going to apply for with that we'll discuss tonight as part of a different federal grant program. Driving PA Forward, that's for the Public Health and Safety Committee has been talking about expanding our EV chargers. We have not committed the borough to doing it. We were, however, able to apply for those rebates in advance just to confirm the availability of the money. And we have secured about $42,000 in those funds, depending on what we want to do with the EV chargers. Let's see here. Next month, we'll start the construction work on the stormwater bump outs. We have to figure out what direction we're going to on Sabine before we go do anything further with the rack fee. The Multimodal Transportation Fund, the organization that makes decisions on that will be meeting mid-November. So I think around mid-November, we'll have an answer on that one. For Elmwood, we just said we got. The statewide local share account that we applied for projects, building improvement projects, I've heard no indication as to when that money is going to be awarded. And then finally, with the ARPA money, we did finally get our second and final payment of that 2 weeks ago. So, and I did the paperwork and stuff to close that out, which because we opted for the revenue recovery, it was thankfully pretty straightforward close out. The other thing I wanted to bring to our attention was something that maybe, if it's okay with you, Cindy, something I'd like to do as part of this time each month is look at what upcoming grant opportunities there are and see if they fit into our strategy for the boroughs. That way, our grants in the past, everyone's been very flexible, which I appreciate, but if we could have less of like, oh, it's due next month, and it'd be a whole thing, that would be great for me and I think everyone. It's September. We have the grants on the other tab of the sheet sorted by month due. So looking at some upcoming grant opportunities, there's one that's actually not on this list and one that is that I think would pair up very well together. So PICO has the Green Region Grant Program, which is a 50-50 grant that provides up to $20,000, so 10 from PICO, 10 from the municipality, for projects that benefit open space in PICO's service region. In addition, DCNR announced recently the state is using a portion of the federal COVID money they received to do a bonus round of grant funding, similar to the grants we applied, they offered back in April that we applied for 3 Elmwood. So talking last night with Parks and Rec, they have, they feel in favor of the borough moving forward with submitting a grant application, assuming council ultimately approves it, to DCNR for master park planning. And the timing would be great because if we could get that money, we would hear back on that in like January or so, as opposed to waiting for the next funding round in April. The other good news with this grant funding is usually DCNR grants are 50-50. However, for this grant round, for municipalities of less than 5,000 people, which Narberth still is, it's only a 20% match required. So if we could apply for both this PICO funding, which could offset our match for the DCNR funding, and the DCNR funding could offset our match for the PICO funding, we could just about get a master park plan fully funded with not very much borough taxpayer money involved in it. So as long as that makes sense to this committee, Parks and Rec was in favor of it. Thankfully, we would have a good time frame where I would have time to write up draft grant applications for both, have Parks and Rec look at their October meeting, and then council do a final review at their October 20th business meeting before they would actually get submitted.
So I guess my only question is about kind of your timing and staff timing, because I think one of the things that we discussed with council was if we were to go for that master park planning grant, that would give you an extra year to work on some of these bigger projects. And this seems like this expedites it to this year, knowing that we'll know it in 2023. So we may have to recalibrate.
Not necessarily, depending on if we get the grant. Usually these grants have like a 2 or 3 year time frame on them. So it could be we get awarded, the grant January, February, and then if we need, more time to kind of get our ducks in a row, then yeah.
Okay, that's my only question.
Well, it's just that I think that if we do get the grant and the spirit of the new Parks and Rec stays where it is, I wouldn't want to slow them down.
Okay.
So because
and actually thinking on more, the good thing is the main thing this grant will be paying for is a professional
Right.
person to be doing the bulk of the work on it.
right, there might have been a tendency to try to do too much ourselves. So
Oh, I'm all for being opportunistic. I just want to be open to if we have to shuffle things around.
Yeah, thank you.
look, they're going to spend a fair amount of time, like deciding, who is the design professional, because now we'll have money.
Exactly, yeah.
So before it was all just a bunch of talk, but now, once we have the grant, you're may get some more serious interest.
And that, Barbara, anything?
I think those are all great points. I think it makes sense if there's this money out there, we should see if we can get some of it and help with this.
Is this something that Simone Collin could perhaps help with that grant and perhaps be someone that would assist us with that?
So I did. I have suggested to Parks and Rec that I have mentioned that Simone Collins has been a good partner for the borough so far on the Town Square project. Excuse me, sorry, I literally just ate an apple right before this meeting. I think there's some openness to that. We'll talk more at a later council meeting, but Parks and Rec does seem actually open to forming a ad hoc master park plan committee that Parks and Rec would have representation on. So I think ultimately that committee would probably make the decision as to who the professional support staff is. But I would absolutely think there'd be an opportunity for Simone Collins. And honestly, I think this would be something too where I would probably want some help from them in doing those grant applications. And I did kind of already put this on Bill Collins' radar, if you will.
Oh, good.
Right.
Good. Because we did all kind of unanimously and enthusiastically support the idea of spending some money to really help for.
Yeah, but I also think that it'll be in their interest to do it at a reasonable cost.
Yeah, and not only that, I think we talked before, it's the evolution. Council talk a lot more about this tonight, but the evolution of the Town Square project, recognizing how that is kind of our town center and how so much flows off of that. So start with that. The multimodal talked about the connections to the train station and including from this area, and then development of Narberth Park, and 3 Elmwood. Development's not the right word.
Yeah.
The future planning for Narberth Park and 3 Elmwood, even flow further beyond the edge of that. So it's almost kind of like one link after the other in terms of what Simone Collins is working on for us.
I like the approach we're taking of really looking at social infrastructure, and whether that be green social infrastructure or public transportation and space and economic social infrastructure. It's a good approach, and I appreciate you connecting all those dots.
Yeah.
It also seems like, from what I've observed watching the meetings with them, that they kind of get us.
Yeah.
Which not everybody does. Because a lot of times these consultants come in with their own ideas of what you need. and they seem to be, you know, a little more, you know, listening to what we need.
Jarvis is a hard one to get sometimes.
I would not recommend looking into November. PennDOT's multimodal one. We're not really ready for that. That only funds construction. It doesn't fund any planning. And I still think we're in the planning phase. Might be a great grant. And I think Simone Collins has told us this. This would be a great grant next year for once this planning phase they're doing for us is done, but not quite yet.
There's kind of a strange thing that goes on in the borough in some camps where they're sort of like opposed to this notion of us doing planning. It's not like everybody, but there's a set of people who think like, no, stop planning and just do it already. But like, it's just not like realistic in terms of the way you have to do these things, because you really have to have the plan to get the grant funding to do it. You can't just just hire a guy to come out and start doing the park.
I think a lot of that language is actually lost, and we're kind of getting off topic, but this idea of like bringing in consultants or planners, where if we were in Lower Merion Township, I mean, we could do that if we folded into Lower Merion Township where they have planners and more staff, but we don't want that. So if we're going to remain our little borough, we're going to have to hire consultants to help us make plans.
I'm just making an observation that whatever we can do to like try to explain this to the public, that it's really an augmentation of staff. It's not a boondoggle.
Yeah.
But it is off topic, so it's
Anyway, okay.
That's all I have for grants.
Okay. Barbara, any comments, questions?
Nope.
Let's move down to action items that we will discuss scheduled bills. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Volunteer appreciation event. Just to let you know, Ira and Barbara, we talked about this event that John Walker's law firm, O'Kenny, has offered to help sponsor. It will be an opportunity for all new boards, commissions, volunteers to understand the expectations of setting up public meetings, how to use the computer, the OWL, how those are recorded and archived, and then an opportunity for a review for all sunshine laws. For example, at our PAC meeting this week, there was questions about how can we use personal emails, how can we file share. I sent those questions to John for some clarification, but did explain that the volunteer event at the beginning of October would be the time to kind of ask those questions. I was honestly just going to coordinate with Samantha and John, get a date and then propose it to council. 100% of us are not going to be there. Quite honestly, we really just need Samantha and John Walko are the MVPs of that. So if you're comfortable with that, I'm going to organize, send out the date, shooting for early to mid-October. Samantha, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, sounds great.
And the hope is that we really kind of just give people the support they need. It makes everyone's lives easier as we move forward. Okay, DVPLT application?
Yeah. So I'm excited to present here after examining our options for liability insurance, trying to save the borough some money. So I think the document in your packet may have cut off the last few rows, which are actually very important. Where the document in the packet ended, I think, was the base cost of Divot versus our current provider, which looked about equal. And if they were equal, I would have said stick with what we know. However, the additional rows that were emailed to you all show all the various discounts that Divot offers. So for example, because we're already in their workers' comp program, we would get 2% off the liability insurance. And we would get, I forget, either 1 or 2% off the workers' compensation insurance. In addition, it shows that there are some one-time costs baked into Divot's proposal. There's a new member fee of $1,000. There's a cancellation fee for our policy at 201 Sabine because that actually renewed a month or two back. And those are one-time fees that will lead to even further savings with Divot compared to CBIZ. I do want to emphasize, I mean, CBIZ has, they've been good. They've worked well with the borough. This is no indictment of any way of, what they've been doing for us. And they're still going to be our provider of our pollution coverage we have with Lower Marion for the sewer system because Divot doesn't offer that coverage. But for everything else, I think Divot is, cheaper. And I think even in the future, to explain one other item on here, they have what's called the Rate Stabilization Fund, which after you've been a member for 2 years, you're eligible for funding each year. The way it works, it's not commercial insurance. It's each municipal member, contributes, and then depending on how much losses you actually had, you have an opportunity to give money back. And another thing they do in terms of giving money back is this rate stabilization funding. And its intent is if you have a year where suddenly you get hit with like a 10% rate increase or something, you have this funding there, if you want to smooth out and even out your rates from year to year. And then I guess the last thing I'd say about Divot, again, all their, literally it's only municipalities that are members. They have a risk control staff, that all they work with are municipalities and, so that's their primary focus. So I think while CBIZ isn't bad, I think Divot will be better. And I think Divot will save us a little bit of money. And so thus I recommend in favor of it, but I'm happy to hear any other thoughts or questions about it.
The one thing you didn't highlight, but I think it's a benefit, I see a bunch of categories where there's really essentially no coverage from our current provider, and the new provider has coverage, unless I'm misreading it.
No, you're definitely correct. But things like flood coverage, that was a big one.
But even the cyber insurance.
Yeah, and the limits on a lot of things are different. It's funny on there on the $1 billion loss limit. I actually got a question from a council member about whether that was a typo or not. Given that our loss limit with CBIZ was $6 million, and did it confirm that through the scale they have with so many municipal members and their reinsurance programs, the loss limit is in fact $1 billion.
I'm happier about the cyber.
Yeah, no, I don't think we'll ever need to use the $1 billion loss limit.
Yeah.
Barbara, any comments or questions?
I had the same comment that Ira had. Yes, you look at the cost and you say, well, they're pretty close, except for these credits that Divot offers. But even if they didn't have those, I would be saying, no, you really should do Divot because there's more coverage being given for pretty much the same price. So I think it just makes sense to do it, to switch.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I mean, again, I think even though it is a small savings, it's not that much of a difference. That stuff adds up and we're getting better coverage. So I appreciate that.
It also comes at a time when insurance rates overall are going up.
Good point. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, information for discussion. We left with the website redesign update.
Yeah. So the borough intern, as directed by this committee, before finishing his time up, did work to update the borough website sitemap to better reflect the proposal that he had given. This committee had reviewed previously. We also did make contact, as the committee authorized, with Todd Rothstein, former photographer with the Inquirer, to provide some photos for the website. He is still working on that. He wanted to get photos of town in different sort of settings and situations. And he also mentioned it being summertime until recently, a lot of people were away and town didn't seem as lively as he wanted to capture in his photos. So, so hopefully in the near future, we'll have some photos for the site. And then like we talked about, I think we can then examine it further and see what further tweaks we want to make, or if we think we need to bring in any, any professional support to do any further work on the website.
Thanks. Electronic payments, 7.2.
Sure. So actually with the skate park grand opening event back during the summer, I realized there was a major gap, and the borough's made a lot of progress the last few years in being able to accept electronic payments. And I give Michelle Carroll a lot of credit for a lot of those improvements. MyGov most recently being a huge improvement because now people can pay for building permits, which are like the bulk of transactions we do with electronic payments and online payments. And however, at the skate park grand opening, I realized that while we have lots of ways in the borough office for people to submit electronic payments, if we're doing anything literally, not literally in the borough office, we don't have any way of accepting them. The borough did previously have this device from PayPal right when I first started, and we were paying like $40 a month for it, and that just seemed kind of obscene to me, given that you also pay processing fees on top of that. So I did cancel that relatively early in my time working for the borough. So I did some research on what is out there now, and the devices from Square actually appealed to me the most. And the thing I like best about Square and the device I'm recommending is the terminal they have doesn't require a cellular connection. It can connect either via Wi-Fi, or it can even accept payments when not connected to the internet. I think it somehow stores the information locally and then processes the transactions once it's back on a Wi-Fi connection. Given the range of Wi-Fi around the office, I think if there are ever future events at the park or even in town, I mean, I'm sure we could probably find Wi-Fi somewhere to make it work. But again, in a last resort, you would have this option of being able to accept payments offline. It prints receipts, which for a borough is kind of important because we need a paper trail for our transactions for the auditor. It's $300. I mean, I don't think that's the end of the world by any means. The processing fees seemed in line with what, Stripe or PayPal or anyone else charges. So given that this device for $300 would avoid us picking up a bill for having a cellular connection, I would recommend in favor of us getting this so we have that capacity without generating a new monthly bill for the borough.
I mean, multiple businesses downtown now use Square, actually. So
it's like
the one. Yeah. Barbara, do you have any objection?
No, I think it's wonderful that it also can do it offline, because I had to deal with you're trying to use something where you need connection, either cellular or Wi-Fi, and you're out at an event and it fails. It is not fun. So it would be really lovely to have this thing with the offline capability. So yeah, I think it's worth it.
That's great. Thank you.
I mean, if you were doing some kind of like high dollar transaction, you might not want to do offline, but like most of our stuff is pretty modest.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We'll get that ordered.
Okay, this is the big one. Draft budget update.
Sure. So I apologize. I did not have a chance to get the draft budget into your packet. I do plan on October 6th, like we did last year, to give a presentation to council about, what I kind of call the baseline budget, where we're at, prior to considering any budget requests or ideas. I'll say, off the cuff, as of today, which there are still a lot of assumptions baked into the budget, and I'll have a lot more definitive information by October 6th. But right now, before considering any request, we're like right around break even for next year in the general fund. And I have about $80,000 of outstanding requests we've received from various organizations that are above and beyond what we funded this year. So like that 80 doesn't include like the MBA, which we agreed to provide funding to this year. So I think we're gonna have three choices, assuming things don't dramatically change between now and October 6th, which they might, but I wouldn't bet on it. One will be we would either have to deny some of those requests, which could be for some of those requests, that could be a very unpopular decision. Second option is that we would have to eat into fund balance. I'm okay if we do that next year. I wouldn't be thrilled about that. You know, the borough and my predecessors put a lot of work into getting us to a place where we actually have a fund balance where it should be. We probably have maybe a little bit more in it than we need, but it's one of those things where, like, I don't really want to set a bad precedent with that and get people in the habit of being like, oh, we'll just dip into, fund balance and we'll be back where we started. So unfortunately, the third option would be, if we want to fund those requests, it would have to involve some kind of tax increase. If we wanted to fund all of those requests with just, pending the conversation on earned income tax, which is not on our agenda because, council tonight will be talking about that. You'd probably be looking at $250,000, $500,000 property tax increase, to fund those requests for next year. The other, one of the big kind of X factors I am still kind of sitting on that could generate significant revenue for the borough is monitoring the construction status of 100 Forest and 203 Haverford. The county will reassess those properties once a CO is issued for them. And, for 114 Forest, we got considerable revenue this year, which is factored into next year's budget. And I would expect something similar between those two properties combined. But by the same token, I don't want to bet on that, because then if something, heaven forbid, if some hiccup were to happen in those projects, then we don't really have anywhere we can really cut or adjustments we can really make. And now we are going to be eating into fund balance. So that's kind of where we're at.
So given that we got the increase from the Elm, 114 Forest, I guess it is. But inflation is happening, and prices of everything we do are going up. So it probably offset that fair.
Yeah, that's a big reason why the budget this year is more difficult next year is more difficult than it was this year. Yeah. And also, this year, all the easy things to do with the budget, obviously you're going to hit those things first. Like refinancing that debt saved us a ton of money this year. The street light acquisition, LED conversion saved us a lot of money. We were well below our usual staffing most of last year and a good chunk of this year. And those are things you don't want to really see happen. I should know this, but I don't. Save Line is sort of fully rented at this point. Fully occupied. It is, yeah. And I did look at the leases we have for the properties and did factor in what those increases for next year will be. Pretty much all of them, though, are well below inflation. No, I understand, but at least you don't have a lot of vacancies. True. No, that is good, and I give a lot of credit to Yensis, our property manager, for that. And sort of one final question: Do you have any sense of whatever increase we get from business privilege tax as we sort of step up the I don't know. Yeah. Well, we kind of already did that this year. I see. Yeah. So we had a pretty good increase from this year to last year. And so, I do kind of using that as kind of a baseline for next year. The other thing that's different that maybe we're being a little too conservative on, but I'd rather be conservative than aggressive, is the real estate market. With how insane the real estate market. The transfer tax. Yeah, our transfer taxes have been well above budget the last couple of years, and I'm really reluctant. I'd rather again stick with our kind of baseline, and if it comes in over, great. But that's kind of interesting, because the fact that the property values went up doesn't necessarily change the ratables, because they don't get necessarily reassessed. Right. Yeah. But if they sell a house for $1.5 million,
the transfer tax is higher than it would have been if they sold it for, $100,000.
Exactly.
Which is such an interesting point though, Art, because I think that speaks, and I don't want to open up the EIT conversation here, but because we need to have it in council, but I think that really speaks to then why I think the EIT is so appealing to me. To diversify.
No, I get it, but
exactly what
I'm just making an observation
yeah.
about the budget, not, I'm still trying to get into it.
So there were a lot of factors, and again, I do want to emphasize, like, we didn't use the ARPA money to fund anything, recognizing that was a one-time revenue source. That was all banked away. But we had a number of other kind of one-time things that happened this year that aren't really, that we can't, either aren't replicable or we can't count on being repeated next year, though they might. For example, property sales, like it could be, I keep hearing rumor, with the interest rate increases that property sales are kind of cooling off now, but.
It turns out, maybe this is more the shore than here, but the people that buy these houses, they don't take mortgages.
Yeah, but again, and I'm underscoring what you're saying, Ira, because I think it contextualizes the larger conversation of being dependent on property taxes.
Right.
Which is an unnerving place to be in.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to go there. I was just trying to understand the like what went up and what went down. So.
Yeah. The other thing that's been, the other thing property will continue to monitor as well is 650 Montgomery. There's been an approved plan for that property for a while now. So we're probably might want to check in with the property owner there to see, what the status of that construction might be.
All rest is down.
Yeah, but they haven't touched it.
Well, that actually hurts our property taxes. Because the county primarily does reassessment when you do a major construction or when you do a demolition.
Well, I mean, it wasn't much of a structure.
Yeah, we should look back on that because I'm curious. They haven't really touched that for quite some time.
Well, right. I'm going to get this. It's okay.
Barbara, any comments, questions?
No.
Now, I guess just as a point of information, Samantha and I, during our meeting, we discussed trying to get the figure from Philadelphia of how many of this approximately 1,700 people Philadelphia city wage tax. And I think we both decided there were probably a lot of other tasks that were more achievable that we should try to waste our time getting. And that number really, we probably would never be able to get from Philadelphia.
It's an accurate description of the conversation.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I would really like to know, but I don't think we're going to get that answer. So, okay, then if there aren't any other questions or comments.
Actually, sorry, there's one of the single biggest request, I will admit. And again, this is something I'll really delve into more on October 6th. But just so you can kind of wrap your heads around, since you're on the finance committee, about what we're getting into here, is Public Works has talked about adding some support. As you all know, up until last year, there were 5 full-time employees in the Public Works Department. They've had 4 employees this year. And to their credit, I think they have gotten a lot done with 4 employees. I think they may have gotten more done with 4 employees this year than with the staff they had previously, with some of the things they've changed and the new equipment they have and that kind of thing. But in the same token, I think rightfully so, the borough has higher expectations for our Public Works Department now than maybe what we had in the past. And again, with acquiring 3 Elmwood, there's going to be some maintenance and cleanup duties with that. They're taking on more of an active role in trash collection, given the complaints and concerns we've gotten about that. There's just a number of other things here and there they've taken on where they didn't ask for a full-time employee. They would at least a part-time person. So the proposal I'm looking at right now, because we also previously had a part-time parking employee, and while it ended up that the person we had didn't end up being the right fit, I do think the idea behind that was sound. So I have a proposal on the 6th I'll have for council to consider about hiring a full-time employee who would split time between Public Works and parking enforcement.
Let me ask, questions about that. The first is, aren't we down a person in public works, or did we already fill that?
We are down a person. So right now there are only 3 employees in public works, and we're working to get back up to 4.
Okay, now the second question is, since the part-time parking person stopped working for us, has the revenue gone down?
Yeah, so looking at Michelle Carroll, to her credit, analyze, and I'm sorry, Barbara, we didn't have a chance to talk about this in the parking committee, looks at where tickets, kind of keeps an eye on, she processes the tickets,
Right.
so she kind of has a grip on where they're being written and what's going on. And her and I had a chance to talk with our full-time parking controller, Will, about this as well.
Yeah.
I don't want to give anyone in the borough any ideas, but I guess what I'll say is most of our enforcement right now with just a full-time person has been in metered parking areas, and the residential zones have been more intermittent enforcement. And I think that if we had the part-time person as well, we would be able to cover both areas with equal intensity.
Right.
But you would also expect, you would also expect that parking ticket revenue would go down with meter up, because now you get an alert that your phone, that your meter's about to run out and you can really easily renew it. So I would have expected that we would be writing less tickets with technology anyway.
Well, again, that's in the metered areas.
Right.
Yeah. So like I said, yeah, tickets in the metered area have been fairly consistent. Like I said, they've dropped off considerably in the
other areas.
Yeah.
Right, but I guess the reason why I brought it up is because, I mean, I think that could help you make an argument for filling the position, because it might actually pay for itself.
True, and that was, I'll double check the numbers. I'll admit that was the argument I made, the first summer.
I know,
council approved it.
I remember.
Yeah, so, I'll double check those numbers and help make sure that not just my intuition, but that the data actually backs that claim up.
And
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that we're poised to implement like a whole new set of rules, at least in the blocks that adopt it. And that'll need to be, I think it would not be so great if we didn't enforce that. And that's, like you said, that's the area that's dropped off.
Since you brought up trash and the issues we're having, I know we kind of mentioned this when we met from the financial side, is it possible for part of that budget to make budget analysis to look at what would the cost or potential cost saving be if we just fold it over into Lower Merion trash?
So we can't do that next year. Our contract with Republic has 1 more year on it. But yeah, Burroughs, myself, and our public works manager have already have started looking at what how feasible those options are and what the costs and service levels would be if we went in that direction.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So 2024.
Yeah, but I mean, the nice part about that is that if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, I'm not hoping for that, but we're not stuck there forever.
With what?
With Lower Merion, like it would be a contract.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be like, we'd be like taking our current trash employees and,
Sure.
So it's just, we're contracting with essentially a different agent.
Exactly. It'd be instead of a private sector vendor, it'd be a public sector vendor.
Yeah.
Which actually, again, not to go too off topic here, but under the administrative hat too, something you had said when we met, Samantha, I thought was interesting was, we continue to see kind of the same problems with different trash contractors, right? Now we can use 2 different companies and see some of the same problems, which leads to probably a symptom of a larger issue within that trash company, which really makes me think, what are these employees of these trash companies being paid? What are their benefits? I'm feeling really uncomfortable with that. I would much prefer, even if it's not a huge cost saving, if we know the public works employees at Lower Merion have good health care and benefit and time off, I feel much better about doing that than perhaps staying with companies that
right, but
are
I
not treating
suspect
people well.
both are having a hard time hiring.
Yeah. But again, I think, I agree. But I think to Cindy's point is that because of whatever their, pay structure and work structure and all that is. And And honestly, in the same vein, that's why I'm proposing we bring on one full-time employee in that split parking public works role as opposed to trying to get two part-time employees, because I think we'll get a much better candidate that way. And yeah.
You know, it all makes sense. It's just, I misunderstood when I read this. I thought you were talking about like we would pick up our own trash or something.
Oh, I mean, that's one of the options that we're looking into. Yeah.
Buy a truck.
Yeah. Buy a truck, hire a couple people.
Yeah.
It's already going to Lower Marion anyway. So
I know. It's just, that's all good till the truck breaks.
Well, yeah. So I will admit that's, so the two things we've been talking about, trying to figure out is getting advice on how feasible it would be for another municipality to provide the service and how feasible it would be for the borough to provide the service. And admittedly, one of the ideas, one of the things that was brought to our attention was, well, you might want to have a backup truck in case the main truck breaks down.
And then like things just lost the whole town.
So, but like I say again, we'll get the numbers and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then with that, if there's nothing else, let's adjourn. But let's note we're going to move meeting times till 6:30, then rather than 6 o'clock for F&A.
That's all. I'm good with that as long as committee is. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you just have to get it out.
Yeah. So the office will take care of the legal after that.
Perfect.
And we'll update the website.
So, sound good?
Yep.
Good. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.